What's up guys, I'm Melanie Morrison, personal trainer and nutritionist, and as someone who did not eat wheat, dairy, and very limited sugar for a long period of time, I'm talking years, I got asked what I eat all the time. Air. Lots and lots of air. Kidding, obviously, but I did want to make a video based on that question because quite often people don't know where to start when looking for alternatives. And why people look for alternatives in the first place is because there's either an allergy, sensitivity, or intolerance involved. And yes, they all sound like the same thing, but they're all very different. So something like a food allergy is more of an immediate response. So you're gonna feel that right away, whether it's the closed off throat or hives or whatever the case is for you. And something like a food sensitivity can actually happen 24 to 72 hours later. So it may not even feel like it's related to the food because you had it a couple days ago. And something like a food intolerance, which is probably one of the most common ones nowadays, is just you're not able to digest that specific food. So finding out those triggers and finding out what the different foods are for you is super important to kind of eliminate those symptoms. So if you're someone who has a food sensitivity or intolerance, that doesn't necessarily mean you'll never be able to eat those foods again. Just by taking a little bit of a break from those foods, a little bit of vacation time for your stomach, you'll be able to incorporate them in down the road. So it may be a 3-month break, 6-month break, obviously every person is different. So by taking that time away from the food, it really gives your stomach a chance to be able to repair itself and not be so stressed all the time. And common signs for sensitivities and intolerances are things like hives or inflammation or redness, rashes, eczema, that type of thing. So taking those foods out, a lot of those symptoms will just disappear. So the substitutions I chose to go through are very common, probably the top 5 most common allergies, sensitivities on the planet. So I thought they'd be pretty important to go through so you'll have some alternatives and you can choose what's best for you. So the first one on the list is wheat, and wheat is something that is a sensitivity or intolerance for a lot of people. So there are many different types of flours that you can substitute instead of using wheat. And the 3 top ones that I chose to do are cassava flour, coconut flour, and almond flour. And why I chose these flours is because something like chickpea flour, which is a flour that you can use in many things, but you typically have to add something else into it to be able to bind or hold together. So with these 3 flours, you don't necessarily need something else to add into it, but you do need to have the proper ratios. The first one we'll go through is cassava flour. So this one is a great one for more savory dishes if you're making pizza dough or if you're making a savory muffin or you need to batter something. Cassava flour is a perfect flour for that. The only thing I would say negative about cassava flour is the fact that it is very expensive. It's like $30 a bag, which is crazy because flour itself is only like $4 a bag. But it is a perfect flour to try out if you are making more of a savory dish and you have that sensitivity to wheat. Almond flour is another substitution that you can use for sweet or savory dishes. I like to use it a lot in baking because it does add a bit of a nuttiness and a bit more of a fattiness to whatever I'm baking. But it can also be used as a breaded chicken. I do a chicken parmesan quite often with almond flour, nutritional yeast, and parsley. And the key thing you do want to remember is when buying almond flour, you want to make sure it's as fresh as possible. If it's been sitting on the shelf for a long period of time, it's more than likely rancid with all those oils in it. So you want to buy it as fresh as possible wherever you're getting it from. So another flour that you can use is coconut flour. Coconut flour is another great substitution and it's perfect for baking because it already has a bit of a sweet taste to it. The one thing to keep in mind with coconut flour is you're not going to use a 1-to-1 ratio. So basically if the recipe calls for 1 cup of flour, you're going to use 1/3 of a cup to a 1/2 cup of coconut flour. It's definitely something you want to keep in mind because it will make it really dry or not be able to bind together if you do use too much coconut flour. And typically when I'm baking with coconut flour, I like to use fruit and stuff like that in my baked goods because it actually with the moisture really helps to cook and bind the coconut flour together. So even though it is coconut flour, it doesn't really taste like coconuts, it just has a sweeter taste to it. So I'll walk you through how to make a loaf using coconut flour and you'll see what I mean about the ratio. So here are the ingredients for our blueberry lemon loaf. We have 1/2 cup of coconut flour mixed with 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/2 cup of blueberries or more if you want, 3 eggs, 1/2 cup of zucchini, and zucchini you don't necessarily need to add, but I like to add it for a bit of moisture. You'll have 1 lemon or 1/2 cup of lemon, 1 tablespoon of maple syrup mixed with 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And then at the end I like to add the coconut oil, so you'll add 3 tablespoons of coconut oil. And then the blueberries, and you'll mix the rest of the ingredients. And you do want it to have a bit of a moist texture, so if it is too dry, just add another egg or a little bit of coconut oil. Then you'll add it to your loaf pan and you'll bake for about 30 to 45 minutes. Blueberries? Can you help me?
Awesome!
So the next one on the list is cheese, and although they are all alternatives, they're not going to taste exactly like cheese. And I'll say that for everything that we're talking about today, it's not going to taste exactly the same, but it is a great alternative if you are someone who has sensitivities, allergies, or intolerances to them. So for cheese specifically, one thing I do like to sprinkle on a lot of stuff is nutritional yeast. So I absolutely love this stuff because it's very nutritionally dense, it's very high in B vitamins, and if you're someone who doesn't eat a lot of carbohydrates, this is a perfect thing to add into your diet. It has protein in it, so if you are vegan or you don't really care for meat as much, being able to sprinkle in a little bit of nutritional yeast will add some protein into your meal. And it also has a pretty high source of iron for something that's just a plant-based product. So although it does have the word yeast in it, it has nothing to do with yeast that you find in bread or baked goods. And it is a plant-based product, so for those who have yeast issues, this is something that will work for you because it's not related at all. Avocados are also really great, and you can even mix it with the nutritional yeast to create a really creamy texture that also has that cheesy flavor. And avocados are great because they're a great source of your essential fatty acids, those good beneficial fats, and really high in potassium. Other cheese alternatives are things like nut cheeses, which are very tasty, but if you're someone who has an allergy or sensitivity to nuts, that may not be the thing for you. But another thing you can look out for is Earth Island makes really good slices of cheese. They make grated cheese as well, but that one is a little bit more processed. So you want to go with the actual slices. The mozzarella one is really good. I probably have one too many slices of that. But they do have mozzarella, cheddar, and whatever kind of cheese you can think of, and it actually tastes pretty close to cheese. Next one on the list is milk substitutions, and they literally have a massive variety of milk substitutions. Anything from oat milk to rice milk to almond milk to coconut milk, you name it, they probably have it. I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up coming with water milk because they literally have it for everything. But I'm going to walk you through my favorite one right now, and that is hemp milk. And usually with other nut milks or seed milks, it usually is a bit of a more of a process. But with hemp milk, it's so easy and it's only 3 ingredients, and you can store it in the fridge for up to 4 days. So here are the ingredients for the hemp milk. Super easy. All you need is a 1/4 cup of hemp hearts, 2 cups of filtered water, and a dash of vanilla. You can also add things like coconut oil for a little bit more of a thickness, or MTC oil for a little bit more energy. You can also add maple syrup and blueberries. You can blend that up together to do popsicles. Tons of options here, but this is super simple. It takes 2 seconds, and it's literally only 3 ingredients. You literally just blend these together and you can make your hemp milk. And you do want to mix for at least a minute so it creates that thick, full texture.
This is water.
What is it?
And hot.
And then you'll blend for a full minute to create that thick, full texture. Then I like to stall it in a tall mason jar so that you can store it into the fridge for up to 3 to 4 days. And I do recommend putting it in the fridge for at least an hour so that it does have time to chill, because it kind of tastes a little bit gross if you don't have it cold. So next one on the list is eggs, and obviously if you're making eggs for breakfast, you're not really going to have a substitution for that. That'd be a little bit weird. But if you are wanting to make something in your baking and use an egg and you want a substitution for that, you can use what's called a flax egg. And what that is 1 tablespoon of ground flax and 3 tablespoons of water. You combine it together and let it sit for about a minute or 2, and it becomes this like gooey, sticky, gross looking thing. But it will substitute for an egg and will help to really bind your mixture together. Another one that you can add for a baked good is just a banana. Half a banana will be kind of an equivalent to an egg, and it will help to really bind your mixture together and add a little bit more of a sweeter taste to it. So the last one on the list is chocolate, and chocolate is very beloved by so many people. I used to eat a lot of chocolate myself, and I didn't really realize that I was actually having a reaction to it. I was starting to get what felt like a bit of a hot flash, but I actually didn't realize it was related to the chocolate. I'd be breaking out in sweat, eating chocolate, not really realizing that that's what it was coming from. So the substitution that you can use are cocoa nibs. I'm not even sure if you're gonna be able to see this. But these are cocoa nibs, and they are basically the crumbled up pieces from the cocoa bean. They have that cocoa taste to it, but they actually don't have any of the actual chocolate in it. So there is no sugar in it. They are a good source of magnesium, good source of fiber, and a good source of iron. And they're a perfect substitute for chocolate chips. So you can sprinkle them in your baked goods or pancakes, whatever you're making. And it has a bit of a crunchy taste to it if you want a bit of a texture in there as well. So there you have it, those are my substitutions. And if you are someone who thinks that you have a sensitivity or allergy to something, my suggestion is to cut it out of your diet for at least 2 weeks and then add it back in and see if you're reacting to it. You're more than likely will react to it after having it out of your diet for 2 weeks, because all of a sudden you'll notice those symptoms a lot more. So if you have any questions about any of these substitutions or about allergies, sensitivities in general, please contact me at hungryelephant on Instagram or melanie.morrisonpt@gmail.com. Happy to answer any of your questions. Please like and subscribe if you want more content. And again, my name is Melanie Morrison.